H1B visas. So we've seen various different tech leaders talking about this stuff. Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, notably. I had some experience with this when I was working in medical imaging. There were a couple of people that were on this particular visa, and I had to do paperwork and whatever with in conjunction with HR to ensure that they continually had the renewal of this. And one of the things that I noted about this was how much it resulted in the loss of freedom for the particular person that was bound to the H1B visa process, because it takes some amount of time. And I think there's some amount of friction with like switching employers or whatever. So what ended up happening was the individuals that were working within a company under this H1B visa, they were kind of trapped. They were in some ways indentured to the company that they were working for because of the way that the H1B visa application process for actually getting permanent authorization to work in the United States was structured. And so I think it ended up favoring the company pretty strongly because it was like a worker that couldn't escape and had to keep working for you. And so you really had them, trapped. I don't know, Lucas. You've been looking into this a little bit more. What's your experience with these processes, or are you just seeing it in the news and kind of trying to take it in?
I don't have experience with the process, although I've had several friends that I've known in my life who have come to America on H1B visas. So I know a little bit about their experiences with them. But moreover, during the Republican campaign for the 2024 election, I thought it very interesting that there's this tension that exists in the Republican Party about it traditionally being about large businesses, and large businesses very much benefit from the H1B visa.
Well, there's a flip side to that. I mean, the reason it is usually big companies is because there's a certain amount of paperwork and whatever that's involved. Small companies, it's a lot harder to even consider that you would take this on because you got to have some amount of specialized knowledge to continue to sponsor the individual because it requires corporate sponsorship. So you almost have to have like a little department within your company that knows how to deal with this stuff.
Amen. So when we say, if Republicans are about small businesses, once again they're revealed that it's not small businesses in size of employees, but numbers of owners. So businesses like the H1 visa program, because it gives them access to a cheaper labor force that's also bound to them legally, for all that work they do to circumvent the regular immigration process. The other things that were topics in the last election were both immigration and also education. And it's interesting to me that the Republicans lament the education system. They complain about American colleges. Um, we also had the Biden administration that was desperate to forgive student debt. And yet here, rather than the supposed nationalism that the Republicans were reporting to bring to the table, we see that uh, they I don't know, they don't mean it for everybody. I guess they want us to go to school for anything but the top jobs in America. And go ahead, go ahead.
I mean, it reminds me of the old way of doing indentured servitude. This was where people didn't have the money to pay for passage to get to America, so they would exchange their future labor for transport and for the ability to be in the country. It feels very much a similar thing. What's going on with the H1B visa? You're exchanging something which is of value, which is some way to root yourself within this country, the ability to work, earn money here. And they do get to keep their salary. I mean, it isn't quite indentured servitude because they're getting paid. I don't know if there's any particular analysis been done to say that people on H1B visas get paid significantly less. I imagine they do, but they do get to keep the money. They do get to be in the country, but they are bound here. So in some sense, it feels like a form of this in the modern era.
Well, there's also this thread of rules for thee and rules for me that coming from Joe Biden's declaration that no man is above the law, the complaints that supposedly Trump versus the United States set the president above the law. So there's that ongoing tension too, and you would think that Republicans, if they were the populist party that they're promising to be, would be erasing this special carve out that's made for a higher class. And maybe from Americanized, that class is the corporation. And there's a special ladder that's extended beyond the borders of the United States to some people who, have who seem either have access to more education or are smarter. And it's, to me, like this is also where it gets interesting. Is immigration in the United States supposed to be a chance for everyone, or are we just welcoming the best from other countries of the world? And the problem that I have with that notion is not that I don't want the best from the rest of the world, but I think it sets a terrible precedent, and one that is against the notions of what America was about. When we talk about liberty, the ability to move about in the world, if we're just giving the ability to move about in the world to the smartest or the richest from other countries, like how much is our word worth? And and the Biden administration conversely has this policy of not questioning anyone that comes seeking asylum, and there seems to be kickback with regards um, to the open borders that were part of their policies of well, this system, the conversation that we're having about who deserves a part or a piece of American citizenship or a piece of America seems to be broken, so we're just not going to engage in that conversation. And now, as the Republicans want to, kick out all the immigrants, but just let, I guess, a special few in because they have H1B visas, that doesn't seem to make sense to me. And go ahead.
Almost no other country has the ability to immigrate to their country unless you have some kind of net worth, special training, or special uh, knowledge skill set that is desirable by the particular country. It's very common. So I'd say if we're going to fault the United States, we pretty much fault the entire world because they're all engaging in the exact same process. I don't think that there's any country that'll just welcome you with open arms unless you are some kind of asylum seeker. If you want to just straight up move to a different place, like you have to have a specialized skill set, whether it be healthcare, knowledge worker, whatever. They're not typically that interested in taking on another person to live in their country.
Well, I think also considering the case of Roger Ver, and I don't mean the case the federal government or the IRS is bringing against him, but the circumstances of his life. He gave up his American citizenship because he had acquired citizenship from St. Kitts and Nevis. And St. Kitts and Nevis is a tiny island in the, I don't know, the Antilles or the Lesser Antilles, north of South America and the Caribbean. But how did he get his citizenship to the Antilles? Was it because he was really good at creating online marketplaces? I don't think so. I think it was because he was worth hundreds of millions of dollars in Bitcoin and probably bought that citizenship to St. Kitts and Nevis. And one, the United States charged him an exit tax. I don't understand how we think that's fair. And two, it was pretty darn sticky as the United States retroactively turned around 10 years later and said, "Oh, we still feel like we have this measure of control about you over you." It also brings to mind Pavel Durov. Whenever he was arrested in France, it made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. But they calmed down a little bit when I saw that he had done the same somewhat as Roger Ver in after after trying to establish the offices and employment, of to establish Telegram's headquarters in San Francisco because of employment issues in the United States and also regulatory and law enforcement eyes and requests with regards to what he did with Telegram. He decided to move it out of the United States, and in doing so, had sought French citizenship and had French citizenship. So I think there's also a like a change in our understanding of who deserves and who belongs to countries of the world. And we talk about nations, and I love to bring it back to feudalism. Feudalism is when some people were a higher class and they owned the land, and the other people were a lower class and they were owned by the nobility, or maybe owned by the land or the houses on the land, if you want to get into the legal peculiarities. But they were bound to that land. And then we left that concept of there being the two class system supposedly, and said, oh, anyone who's born in an area has an input in the government there. And French for to be born is nation, and that's where we come up with the word nation. And then we come to America, where people get to jump on boats and now jump on planes, trains, and automobiles, and cross the Darien Gap and get to the United States. And we have supposedly a more open immigration system, or a more open understanding of who deserves and who belongs here. But I think we need to turn around and maybe think about concepts like, does being born here automatically give someone access to that privilege? And also, why do we allow people to hold allegiances to more than one country? In a world of this firm concept of nationhood, or being born somewhere. If countries hadn't given up either of your parents, and your parents were from, I don't know, Belgium and Norway, maybe Norway and Belgium fought over the child of that union. But I don't think we live in that world anymore. And I think that we need to see more flexible passing around of citizenship, so people can move around the world.
Thinking about the Roger Ver situation, it got me thinking: has Bitcoin really enabled this borderless money situation that has been contemplated? Because with Roger Ver trying to abscond from the United States with his Bitcoin holdings, his attempt to escape from the prison, that is the border nations that he was born into, it was largely unsuccessful. Like he somewhat escaped, but he didn't escape the long arm of the United States when they finally decided that they wanted to claw him back. In some ways, it almost seems like Bitcoin is some opportunity to escape, but in practicality, you can't escape from the physical power of a nation state that decides it wants to grab you. It decides it wants to extradite you from wherever you're at. And I think this idea of immigration and H1B visas, it's still it's something where you have to bow down to the Lord, or the country that you're operating within, both the country you're attempting to leave in, the country you're attempting to come into. These nation entities are still very much relevant and important and I don't think we've achieved escape velocity with Bitcoin yet. It's not the kind of thing where even if you can walk across a border with a whole bunch of Bitcoin, it doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be free once you've done this activity. I think the Roger Ver situation is one that everybody's got to be very, very keen to keep an eye on.
Well, I think this is one of the most interesting aspects of Bitcoin. The effects, it gives individuals the ability to pick up and leave and carry carry value that they've accrued with them. And we've been able to do that with dollars from some time for some time, but dollars are controlled by the United States and ultimately are bound to not the gold held in vaults, but the taxes that are levied by the United States. And we've abused the or the United States has abused the ratio of dollars and the value of those dollars against the expected returns of those taxes. So that's a problem. But they've used in doing so, they've spread those dollars throughout the world. Now we also turn around and sanction and try to control people's the flow of their money through controlling their bank accounts of individual people, but even countries, and not just that, but also having setting up different trade relations with other countries around the world that have also inhibited those countries. I mean, why is it that we live in a world where um, uh, most of the other areas of the world want to send their people to the United States? Do we have magic fairy dust or unicorns that were growing here in the United States? No, we have dollars, and we distribute them unequally throughout the world. So the pressure that Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies begin to apply on the abuses of that system that we've relied on for so long do begin to fall apart. And I think that's good for people in America, citizens of other countries of the world, because right now, that's a powerful control on everyone in the world. But as 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 options deflate the power of just one currency, that is, what we will begin to see is countries that look at the United States dollar maybe like an Argentine peso and say that money's not so good here, you know. And I know people talk about gold or cryptocurrency has stepped into those shoes, but I think what we're going to see is cryptocurrencies also being used, or the technology of cryptocurrencies being used by smaller groups of people to make their money more sound, and something that people can get in and out of, can move in and out of, um, so won't rely on um, you know antiquated notions of serfdom and nobility to bind people to an area and to a system.
So thinking about the H1B visas, Musk has come out very pro on this. He said we should have more of this. It seems pretty self-serving that he wants more H1B visas. He's got a bunch of different tech companies, high tech stuff with SpaceX and Tesla and X, and the variety of different companies that he's involved in. It's no surprise that he wants these H1B visas, because he wants to continue to populate his companies with tech workers that can achieve these things. What have you seen on the opposite side? Was Laura Loomer coming out and she said she's against the H1B visas? How did she stack up?
I mean, first of all, you see, um, and this is anecdotal, but I think this speaks to the larger problem. You see people who've responded to Elon's tweet and said, "I'm an American. I'm qualified. I applied to work at X. I have a degree from an American university. How hard could it be? And why are you relying on workers from outside the country who might be satisfied with a lower wage? If there's a problem in the American education system, why aren't we fixing that? You've made the jump from being a billionaire who owns a couple of countries to having a finger, if not a fist, around the neck of politicians, a finger in, if not a fist around the neck of politicians, and and education is part of this issue. So, and Laura Loomer brought this out in a tweet, and I find that fascinating because I just leading into this show, I tried to find that tweet from Laura Loomer, and I can't find her account anymore. And I find screenshots of Laura Loomer's account that says she's lost her badge. She may have been kicked off Twitter. I don't know. And yeah, here we go.
Yeah, I went looking for it and I encountered the exact same thing. Is this a disagreement with Elon Musk where he's flexing his power over X and saying, I'm going to censor somebody who's saying something that I don't like? I think that the danger and the possibility of that happening are high. Like this is exactly the problem with a benevolent dictator is if they decide that they don't like what you're saying or they don't like what you're doing, then they're no longer benevolent to you. So this is maybe the evidence that X isn't quite as neutral as we had all hoped.
Absolutely. And this is why decentralization is so important,
So
especially
we still have an opportunity here. Like the peoples of the world have not yet cracked the correct social media architecture here. Like as much as X may have been a playground for free speech in some sense, Laura Loomer has found that there are certain bounds, and it looks like if you cross Musk, this is the one place where thou shalt not thou shalt not go.
yeah, thou shalt not question Elon Musk's business decisions. Um, yeah, so Elon Musk tweeted about H1B visas, sort of pushing back against the narrative in the Republican Party that he's latched onto of late. And Laura Loomer responded with quite a tweet. Wasn't one of those 160 character ones. It was a little bit longer. And and in that tweet, she called out Elon Musk um, for questioned his loyalty to Trump and questioned the timeline of his loyalty to Trump, and also raised these questions of where are you running to Trump and inserting yourself into the government via Doge to promote your own companies. And I think those are very valid questions, and that we should be very wary of one, anyone who runs to government and says, "I'm going to run it as a business." Government isn't a business, and Elon Musk has talked about how he wants to fix the American system or the American government, and he does so under the understanding that it is a business, and it's not. Governments are explicitly not. Anytime a politician says that they're a businessman and that that's their credentials for going to run government, we should be very wary because governments can tax, governments can make their own money. Businesses are supposed to answer to governments, and governments are supposed to answer to the people. And a lot of times, those leaders in business want it. See the only difference between themselves and a dictator or an authoritarian is their popularity and and their benevolence. So I've been curious as to what was going to happen with both Elon and Vivek's. um, like Vivek in one case when he's running for the Republican nomination, that's one case. And many Republicans run on that line of, oh, I'm a businessman. I'm going to go, bring financial responsibility back to the government. Um, but the long arc of history for all those who claim to do so, they don't. There's a success rate of somewhere around 0. So I'm always dubious whenever I hear that claim thrown out. And I also look at Vivek Ramaswamy's history. I don't, Grant, have you followed him before he got into politics much?
No, he kind of came on my radar when he was involved in politics. That's when I started to notice him. So no, I really hadn't caught up with what Vivek was doing before he started to get involved with politics. What was he doing before then?
He has a biomedical, company. He makes pharmaceuticals. Um, and one of the pharmaceuticals that he had purchased was a drug that was supposed to treat Alzheimer's that showed very little response. And I thought this was very interesting. One, whenever he was running in the Republican primary, because of the tension between the Trump and the Biden administrations and their COVID responses, and so much of the populist groundswell against the Biden administration has to do with the COVID pandemic. But the responses that were brought forward under the Trump administration. The drive for the vaccines, Operation Warp Speed, that comes from the Trump administration, not just the Trump administration, but from some of these libertarian sort of businesses solve everything. Why do we need regulation? And I, again, a very interesting quandary that they come into as we begin to see that there are heart issues and side effect issues that came along with some of these vaccines, for which there was a low which did not have to meet traditional thresholds of regulation.
Yeah, there wasn't as much diligence. Everything was under emergency use, and that meant that the opportunity to study what the long-term effects or even whether the effectiveness of what was being espoused was really there. I remember watching a lot of this debate about efficacy, about accuracy, about whether these types of vaccines or treatments were going to accomplish the given goal. And I think now we're finding out that not all of this worked out the way that it originally been discussed. So yeah, I don't think Trump gets a free pass on what they did with Operation Warp Speed, because they definitely fast tracked a lot of this stuff. And so whatever amount of regulatory oversight normally occurs, almost none of it occurred for what was going on with the mRNA vaccines.
Yeah, and I mean, ballyhoo to Elon and Vivek for also offering their their consultation for how to fix the federal government. But why do we listen to Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy? Um, the American government is supposed to work for all Americans, and just because they have billions of dollars each, um, uh, I don't see that. I don't understand why that is something that the American people think qualifies them to go, quote unquote, fix government. And when we also turn around and look, I'm much more, I lean much more heavily towards Bobby Kennedy and what Bobby Kennedy wants to do. But what does Vivek Ramaswamy think whenever he hears that Bobby Kennedy wants to increase regulation and remove the marketing perks that pharmaceutical companies get. Yeah, I doubt that Vivek Ramaswamy is as excited about that.
To the extent that the executive, Trump, is allowed to pick certain people to do certain jobs, I think if if he wants to create some new advisory council called Department of Governmental Efficiency and it has to go through the normal procedures, whatever. I mean, if Elon Musk and Vivek come up with good ideas, maybe that's okay. I don't know how much power they're going to actually enact anything that they have talked about, but I guess to whatever extent that the executive is allowed to pick a certain subset of people that are going to do things. Does it fall into that? I mean, it almost feels like they're just part of the executive branch, and they've, I don't know, been given new positions. We made all these czars. Is it similar to how we've got all these czar appointments?
I mean, all of these czar appointments, the only czar, the only czar that makes sense is the intelligence czar, and that's because there are so many different intelligence bodies. And I think that's a deeper problem. Um, you know, where are the days in America in which the executive uh, proposes policy and presents that to Congress? Because making an advisory governmental body to advise, to be the uh, I don't know, a check against the Office of Management and Budget. The place where we go to shut off government spending is not the Federal Reserve, and it's not creating another off the books executive agency. It's through Congress. And um we also see it's amazing to me that instead of fixing some of these problems, the Republican solution so far has been to go out and uh, create shadow agencies to do the same things that are maybe more outside of the control of Congress.
Yeah, OMB, that this pretty much was the attempt to create a Department of Governmental Efficiency in some sense, wasn't it? This is intended to help propose budgets, to analyze policies, to see what the budget impact might be. That this, in some ways, feels like it was the original purpose, similar to what Doge is supposed to accomplish.
Sure. And look at the date of it, July 1st, 1970, leading right into the Nixon shock and the admission that the United States had been counterfeiting the dollars that it had been making. But whether it's under the executive branch or whether it's a shadow agency, the United States has never been well served by creating, one, federal agencies, and two, especially federal agencies that are shadow agencies. Well, what is the CIA but a shadow agency of the State Department? And whenever we remove the link between elections and our especially federal government, we create some monsters. And it's amazing to me that in the wake of the lawfare that was brought against Donald Trump while he was out of office through the Department of Justice and the FBI, that his response was, "I'm going to make them stronger. I'm going to go clean house in those agencies, and I'm going to make them stronger." You know,
Yeah,
I,
you'd think the reaction would be, let's get rid of this thing which has been weaponized against me. Let's make it so that it can never happen again, instead of, oh, well, let's just clean out the corruption. It's like maybe that should never have existed in the first place.
Now that if you ran on that, I would vote for you. Um, so and maybe the degree of control that those shadow agencies now hold over our elected officials, because it sure seems, Mike Johnson said he was gonna do all of that, and from the seat of Congress, from the House of Representatives, which is the most powerful office, the most powerful chamber in our federal government. But we've created a chamber of yes men, especially in the House of Representatives, and I don't know, can I say the word colluders in the Senate? The Senate was supposed to be some supposed check on the House of Representatives, but um, uh, they get drug into a security state skiff, and they come back with singing a new tune. I don't understand. I don't understand why the executive, the president of the United States, is not focusing on those issues and getting rid of, if they want to be getting rid of government overspending, um, you know, the places that they're talking about are a fraction of the spending. Government overspending comes from Social Security and Medicaid and our defense budget. And those are by far the two biggest chunks. And instead, we have Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy screaming about $9,000 bolts and research programs that they don't agree with, which are a pittance in that pot of money that is being swirled around.
They're easy targets. It's low hanging fruit. It's easy to criticize these small things, but what's the real impact on the budget? I hear you loud and clear on that one, because you're not going to move the needle with things that are not a significant contributor to the overall budget. You've got to look at the biggest contributors and start to think hard about what's the right way to do it. I've heard some statements, and I've looked into this just a little bit, that Social Security actually could be solvent, but it's that the government is stealing from it, right? If you think about it just from the sense of, well, what is Social Security supposed to do? It's supposed to have a certain amount of income. It's supposed to pay out a certain amount of dividends to people that have put in a certain amount. That actually is solvent, but it's that the government keeps stealing from that pot, because Social Security is just a tax, and that means it just goes into the general fund. So it's kind of like it's still a matter of government overspending that is resulting in all of the rest of this. Have you seen anything to that effect?
Oh, that's I certainly have, and that has been a long problem with Social Security. We put money into it when there's any excess, or that money is taken all the time. This is where we also hear that Donald Trump is pro crypto, pro blockchain. Cynthia Loomis is pro blockchain. Now we're talking about a Bitcoin strategic reserve. No, we need to be seeing something like a politician come forward and says, why is Medicare and Medicaid not put on a blockchain? Why are the inputs of the people who are engaging in that system um, not recorded in a sophisticated financial tool that stops that stops the abuse of ignorance that is going on with Congress as they steal those funds and disperse them elsewhere. So um, that's all I've got for today. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think it's a good discussion. Really interested to dive in deeper, watch how this situation unfolds. I'm going to be watching Laura Loomer's account pretty carefully, because this, I think, is one of the most important developments to come out of all of this, is how free really is this platform that we're all participating in here. And if it turns out that all of this was done in retribution, I think we got to look very carefully about where we put our time and energy, um, especially as each of us works within the space of citizen journalism, or even what this show is doing. You know, uh, can we be censored if we say the wrong thing, and what does that mean for our continued desire to keep doing this? Like, I think we all got to be very careful and very thoughtful about where we put our time and energy. And I'm definitely taking the Laura Loomer situation to heart.
Yeah, I've been aware of Laura Loomer. She has Well, she can definitely say some incendiary things, but I'm going to go find Laura Loomer's account and follow her because um, I one think that she said some very important things that you know, in calling out Elon Musk and in calling out um, the hypocrisy in some of the positions of the Trump administration. And I'm shocked to see the response that happened to her. And whether, you know, Elon Musk and X say that oh, you know, she was attacked by bots, she was attacked by Elon Musk's supporters, etc. Um, it certainly doesn't look good. And you would think that if they claim to be the harbingers of free speech that they are, that this wouldn't happen. So um, good for Laura. Keep an eye on her. We'll see what happens.
So yeah.